This watch is like a killer whale. They're both aquatic, black and white, visually stunning, and among the smartest and most powerful animals in the ocean. This majestic cetacean perfectly symbolises the smart aesthetics and engineering behind this impressive watch. Powerful, intelligent, and beautiful. This is the legendary Omega Seamaster Diver 300. Hello, I'm Zade and welcome to another episode of Dial Odyssey. In today's special episode, we're diving into the first Omega featured on this channel, none other than the enduring Seamaster, and we'll explore what makes it quite possibly one of the smartest dive watches you could own. Launched in 1948 to mark Omega's 100th anniversary, it's since evolved from its original conception as a dressy, water-resistant watch into one of Omega's most iconic and longest-running collections. In 1993, it was redesigned, introducing a distinctive new style, and by 2018, the Seamaster had become a technical titan, all while retaining its 1993 charm. I've always been a fan of the Seamaster 300. The James Bond I grew up with was Pierce Brosnan, and the watch was first introduced during his era, making its debut in 1995's GoldenEye. As a kid watching James Bond films, I loved how this watch was packed with far-fetched technology, always ready to pull 007 out of danger. For me, this Seamaster line carries a lot of nostalgia, even though it's evolved far beyond the aluminium bezel models of the 90s and noughties. However, despite the latest iteration of this watch featuring some of the most impressive technological innovations, I am pleased it's still somewhat faithful to the original 1993 design DNA. Which brings me on to one of the most contentious aspects of the Seamaster that I would like to address: the helium escape valve. Now, most dive watches have their helium escape valve concealed or integrated into the case, a bit like the 600-meter Tissot Sea Star I reviewed, and even this Rolex Sea Dweller with an impressive water resistance of 3,900 meters. So why does this Omega with 300 meters of water resistance have such a conspicuous helium escape valve? Well, it's mostly a design choice, but it's also a nod to its very functional tool watch heritage. The helium escape valve is polarizing to say the least. Some love it, some hate it. As for my opinion, I love it. The shape of this watch, especially with the helium escape valve, is so unique. It has a touch of retro charm, and of course it sets the Seamaster apart from the plethora of other dive watches. You see, normal can be a dangerous word in design. You could of course argue that the protruding valve isn't necessary, and that they should just follow the normal approach by making it subtle, but then the watch would be one step closer to every other dive watch. Omega, if you're listening, and I mean I doubt you are, but if you are, please don't remove the valve. It's become such an iconic part of the watch and it really adds character. Perhaps you could add some sort of additional function to it, like having it rotate to change the date or something similar, or even adding a laser pointer, which would be a fun nod to its 007 history. But either way, it's a unique feature of this watch. I also prefer the valve on this generation to the previous one. Its tapered end gives it more shape and elegance, rather than the old straight cylinder design. The watch is 13.56mm thick, 49.90mm lug to lug, and 42mm wide. And despite the protruding helium escape valve, I find it pretty much wears true to size. However, I do find the white dial gives the watch a slightly more prominent visual presence compared to the other colors. Speaking of the dial, it's a masterpiece. Just like the original 1993 design, it features similar wave lines. I also really like how they use ceramic for both the dial and the bezel. It gives the watch a classy, sophisticated look. And this brings me on to my main point, that this is one of the smartest dive watches. Dive watches are usually bulky, utilitarian and rugged, and of course they should be. But for its price, this Seamaster is incredibly refined. The beautifully scalloped bezel is relatively minimal, especially along the edges, giving it a clean, sleek look. It also makes the watch surprisingly dressy. This white dial Seamaster feels like the watch James Bond would wear with his tuxedo. It's capable enough for a serious dive, yet refined enough for a formal event. The rubber strap adds to the watch's refined appearance compared to the bracelet. I find the bracelet a little bit too fussy, and the black strap contrasts nicely with the white dial. I also like the shape of the buckle. It's surprisingly detailed with beveled edges, brushed and polished surfaces, and an embossed steel Omega logo. The date window is subtly placed at 6 o'clock, keeping the dial clean and symmetrical. As you would expect, the lume is excellent, and I find the watch very legible in all light conditions. The case is also beautifully finished, and I find many of its curves and angles subtly echo the scalloped contours of the bezel. So from an aesthetic point of view, this watch is one of the smartest and most elegant dive watches you could own. But when I say smart, I don't just mean it looks good, because its movement is seriously impressive. One of its hallmark technical innovations is the coaxial escapement. Now, this feature is revolutionary, and it deserves a separate video to explain it properly, but to briefly explain, it's a mechanism that uses a smaller contact surface, reducing friction, which results in greater long-term accuracy and longer service intervals. It boasts superior anti-magnetic properties, thanks to the use of non-magnetic alloys, and a silicone balance spring, which is 3 times finer than a human hair. This allows the watch to withstand magnetic fields of up to 15,000 Gauss. For context, a fridge magnet is about 50 to 100 Gauss, and an MRI machine ranges from 15,000 to 30,000 Gauss. It also has a 55-hour power reserve, which is okay. I would have liked it to be a little bit higher, but for an everyday watch, it's perfectly adequate. Finally, to truly showcase the movement's exceptional capabilities, the watch must pass 8 thorough tests set by METAS, the Swiss Federal Institute for Metrology, to earn the Master Chronometer title. Just passing one of these tests would be impressive on its own, which highlights the outstanding engineering of this movement. As I said, this is one of the smartest dive watches. However, I do have one criticism of this watch, which is also what makes the bezel so sleek. It lacks a proper grip. Sometimes I can barely rotate it, which is really frustrating because I use the bezel to time a lot of things. But to be fair, I do have chunky fingers and the bezel sits relatively low, so I would definitely recommend seeing it in person and trying it out. But honestly, I can live with it. It's a design trade-off that gives the watch a sleek, elegant look, which makes it a great everyday wearer. So what archetype is this Seamaster? This was one of the hardest watches to rate. Athena, the engineering marvel, tempted me because of its impressive movement, but I'm going to give it the Odysseus archetype. It's in a league of its own, and it's one of the smartest dive watches you could own, both mechanically and aesthetically. It has a rich and fascinating history, and it will likely remain Omega's longest running product line for many years to come. And that's it for today. Stay tuned for the next episode, and see you next time.